Hello, good morning. My name is John Witt, and this is a handstand prep class. So if you've never taken the class before, I'll give you steps in getting more conditioned in terms of strengthening your hands, your shoulders, learning a body line. These are all good things. Today's focus is going to be a little bit more on bent arm strength. So if you're just learning push-ups or plank, those are obviously really, really good things to do. But there's some really great variations of push-ups that are probably going to be more difficult for you to do, but I've mentioned this before, when you're adding something that's a little bit more complex, it's going to require more strength and skill. So if you're learning handstands, at some point if you don't get them, you might get frustrated with them and you'll probably stop doing them. So with these, they're more strength involved. So the good thing is that you'll get stronger, and like I've mentioned before, as you get stronger, most likely it's going to be easier and easier for you to develop just the skill of the handstand. The handstand, in some ways, doesn't really require a lot of strength, but like I said, the more you know how to apply yourself in terms of strength and tension, it makes it a lot easier to do these things. So I'm just going to have my hands on my hips, and I'm just going to be moving my pelvis in space. So these are hip rotations, just a basic warm-up. But in moving my pelvis, it's going to help move everything, With the hips moving forward, it's back bending. And when the hips moving back, it's forward bending. So really basic, but you should prepare yourself before you go upside down, and just building up some body awareness is good. So I'm going to circle the hips in the opposite direction. You could do this for 30, 60 seconds, something like that. But there's not a day that I don't manipulate my pelvis. I'll either strengthen it or work on the soft tissues, or all the above, right? But very good for walking. So I'm just going to bring my hips back into the middle, and I'm just going to do a pelvic rotation, which is a little bit different, and it requires a little bit more body awareness. So as I'm moving my pelvis in space, I'm trying to keep my upper body in the same line. If you notice with the stiffness of the body, you might have to go back to the first variation. So with bent knees, it can be easier to do. Hands on hips might give you the understanding of how to move the hips in space, but you could be a little bit more detailed in moving the pelvis, which will help with your coordination. And not that a handstand is an incredibly coordinated skill, but it does require that awareness. So I'm just going to turn to the side just so that you can see this a little bit better. So I'm moving my tailbone down, and then I'm sticking my butt out. I'm moving it down. The downward position is what you're using in plank, up dog, Cobra, handstands. So it's something that you really do need to understand, and it'll help tremendously. So I'm just going to stick it out again, and then I'm going to bring it down. If you're really weak in your abdomen, the posterior tilt can really help with that. So I'm going to stick it out again, and then bringing it down. Now I'm going to keep it down. I'm going to take the arms into a cactus position. I'm going to take the arms up overhead. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to get my shoulders up towards my ears, right? And I'll just turn so that you can see that a little bit better. And then I'm going to take the arms back into cactus. I'm going to make my hands into fists, nice and strong. But just feel if you're losing the posterior tilt of the pelvis. Take the arms up overhead, try to get the shoulders up towards the ears, really extend up through the arms, go back into a cactus position, really lift up, try to get the shoulders up to the ears. And this is, again, big part of a good handstand is this initially. And then some people like not so much pressure in extending, but it'll help with getting a good solid 10 seconds in handstand. Then you can take the arms back to cactus, and you can bring the arms down. So just go back into moving the pelvis again, just to get the hips to move around. Just a few more. And then taking the pelvis into the opposite direction. Right? coming back into the middle. So I'm going to do, I usually do some lower body stuff. I mentioned this before, I mention it in every class. The stronger your legs are, the easier it is to kick up. So if you're really struggling kicking up, there's a couple of reasons for that. If you sent me a video, it'd be very easy to help you with your handstand. You know, if I know exactly what it is that, if I can, you know, when I see it, it's pretty obvious, I could help anybody get into a handstand. So my hand is, I'm using a wall, and what I'm going to do is just going to bend the knees just into just a basic, like heels up, knees at 90-degree angle. This is like the basic. You could obviously not use the wall, but let's say you need the wall or a chair, right? You could do that. And then I'm coming up, and then I'm going to lower it where I'm sitting more on my heels. And this is really just like active stretching of the feet and of the hips. Very good for more lower body motions. So I'm going to come up just a little bit. I'm bringing myself up. I'm going to come up and down a few more times. So I'm lowering. You don't need the arms unless you need them. You know, you really don't need them. But of course, use them if you need the balance. Bring yourself up a little bit off the heels. Bring yourself back up to standing. I'm going to do a couple more. So lift up onto the toes, lift the heels, lower, nice and slow. This quarter position, you can get really strong through the legs. It's just if you want to add more range in your knees, a little bit in your hips, but what you'll really get is manipulating the feet more, which helps with, like I said, a number of positions. So bring it up just a little bit higher, up to the height of the knees, come all the way up to standing. So you're just in a standing position. So I'm gonna come down on my knees. I'm gonna do some stuff with a strap, which is really good for the shoulders. And if you don't have a strap, right, you could use a broomstick. It's just, most people have a yoga strap. You don't, you could use a towel or something like that. But I'm just gonna taking it into my hands, and I'm just where my palms are up, and I'm pulling the strap apart. There's other ways to strengthen the rotators with weights and elastic bands, but just because I'm gonna add more mobility for the shoulders, this is why I'm using this. So I'm just pulling in opposition, not incredibly hard, but hard enough. Then I'm gonna take the hands to the left, and in changing the angle, it'll just add, you'll feel you're using the sides more independently. You can pick up on which side is weaker. So I'm taking it in the middle, and then I'm taking it back over to the right, and then back to center. Now, if you need to change your feet, you can sit on the feet as I am. You could sit on a block, of course. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hands about the width of the shoulders, and then I'm going to be up in the overhead position. I'm pulling the strap apart, but now I'm going to elevate the scapula. So I'm pulling out wide, and the hands can be wider than the shoulders. You know, if you want to work closer together, you know, you could certainly do that, but keep lifting the scapula up towards the ears, and then let that relax, right? Just, it's good to come in and out of these things because you'll integrate more. And sometimes people don't necessarily know what to use in terms of their physicality. So I'm just taking it up overhead, pulling the strap apart, really, really strong through the hands, widening out the shoulders, and then I'm taking the arms back down. So I'm going to change again the feet. So I'm here and I'm up on my toes. So I'm going to do some dislocates. They're called dislocates. So take the arms up into a wide position, and maybe this is the angle that you're at. You know, it's super basic, but very good for the shoulders. And if it's okay, I'm going to take the arms further back and you can see how I'm making my strap longer. So the beauty of the strap is that it's a little bit easier to make it less intense in the shoulders. And I'm doing the first one pretty slow. So like, I'm going to move through these, but maybe you can't move. Maybe it's just better to be static. So if you have any apprehension or you're like getting really stressed about it, don't take the arms further back. But if it's okay, I'm going to take the arms further and further back. And then over time, I can bring the strap all the way down. Now feel free to not have so much tension in the strap. So if you're ever like oh my God, I'm going too far. Don't pull out. Just bring the hands closer together like, you're putting a towel around yourself. But I'm going to pull out and taking it up. And what I would do is I'd find angles that I'd really tighten, and that'll help with, the extension of the arms and the shoulders. I'm going to do this a couple more times. I'm not just more of an introduction, but take the arms straight up overhead and just imagine that the shoulders are widening, wider than the hands. And then as you take the arms back, try to keep the ribs in, like as if you were in a handstand. So then as I'm taking the arms back in space, I may want to hold it in an angle that I'm really tight in, but I could also take it back further and then down and then taking it up, right? Make it wide to come up if you need to, or even just come out of it, right? I'm going to take it all the way up, forward, and last time I'm going to take it out and down. Again, change your feet position if you need to. I'm bringing it back, and then I'm bringing it down, and then I'm taking it up. And there's probably multiple angles that you really need, and then bringing it forward and bringing it down. Very good for overhead positions. Very good for, say, like, you're wanting to work wheel. It's a good thing to do. But what we're going to do is come up onto our hands. So when you come onto your hands, just press through the hands and widen out through the shoulders, widen out through the back. You can be a little bit more obvious, right? So it's a little different than a cat stretch, right? This is protraction in the shoulders. It's what you need in handstands. If you find that your shoulder blades are in, it's very hard to do a handstand. So press out, and if you can, just lift your knees up off the floor. So just pressing through the hands, like a baby crow, like a crow position. But push through the hands, the fingertips, and then lower the knees. I'm going to turn the hands back towards the knees, and I'm going to move the weight side to side to adjust the hands to the wrist. And I say this, and anytime I teach this, what you're building is an awareness as far as how much pressure to bring in the hands. You would think that more is better. It could be, if you need more leverage, then you use more leverage. But it might be also that you need less leverage. I think a general warm-up for your handstands for a long time is good, but then kind of see which exercises actually help you more. So I'm going to take my hands into a turned out position, and I'm going to be lifting. I want my shoulders over my hands, my wrists. I'm going to lift the heels of my hands off the floor and then lower. And I'm going to lift, and I'm going to lower. I'm going to lift, slowly lower, taking it up. Slow, lower, taking it up, bringing it down. Don't use your thumbs. Up, slow down, taking it back up and down. And I'm going to do about 4 more. But what you could do is when you get tired, that's your number. And I'm a bigger fan of more sets than reps. Like doing a lot of reps is okay, right? But more frequency is better. If you're doing it 3 times a day rather than, say, doing this like 20 times. I mean, if you have that capacity, then of course it's okay. But go back to turning the hands back towards the knees. So you're just back in this position. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit back if I can, just to add more of a stretch into the hands, the wrist. Right? And then I'm going to turn the hands forward. I'm going to come up into plank, take it up into down dog, and then I'll introduce what we're doing in terms of bent arm strength today. So, like I said, the more strenuous, because you could be doing push-ups for your whole life, and those are great, right? It's a great symmetrical position, but also changing the way that you do it can add a whole different skill and coordination, but also adding a lot more strength, right? So I'm going to come up into plank where my index fingers are turned. They're forward, but my hands are slightly turned out, right? So I'm going to lift up into plank, protract through the shoulders. I should feel solid, really strong. And you want to be, especially if you're, wanting the handstand, is to push really hard through the hands, and you'll see a difference in that. So take it up into down dog and pedal the legs out.
So as I pedal the legs out, I'm just kind of moving my hips as I'm moving my feet, right? Getting more of a stretch through my posterior, which helps. You know, if you have an existing yoga practice, you're probably pretty good at forward bends. And if you're really not good at forward bends, it's something to work on, and it'll make any inversion easier or better, right? But I'm going to come down on my knees, and I'm just going to explain what we're going to do next. So the first one I'm going to do, these are called Judo Push-Ups. So you're in a very short down dog. So I've used pike push-ups before, but this is the first time that I'm using a Judo push-up, is that you're in a down dog and you're lowering your forearms. And that can be very difficult, just controlling that lowering. And then you can come down on the knees. And then the second part is you're going to come down on the elbows, but shoot the body forward and through, and then come back. So if you've never done this before, it's good to watch, right? You can just watch rather than not doing it. But say you're strong, you're like, hey, I want to try this. You can give it a shot. So you're going up in a down dog, and then I'm going to make it, you know, not incredibly short, but just a little bit shorter. So I'm in down dog. You bend your elbows, right? You get to your forearms, right? Now, could you lift your forearms up? So that's like basic of this. So say you don't want to shoot forward, just going to come down on my elbows. I'm going to press through my hands and lift the forearms. So lower, center of the forearm is what you're pushing through. Back up. One more time down. Back up. And then come down on the knees. So if that's really difficult for you where you can't get the elbows up, it's okay. Just work on slowly lowering that down. But then if you can, what you're going to try to do is we're going to shoot through. So once you're from the forearms, you're going to shoot through your arms into like a low, like a chaturanga, like a low push-up, right? And we're just going to be there, and I'll have you come down on your knees. But eventually what you can do is you can come all the way back, right? So I'm coming up onto the hands. I'm going to come down on the forearms, right? And I'm going to keep my butt low and shoot through, right? Into a low push-up. And then I'm going to press up into a plank. Right? So that's like a modified, slowly kind of getting it back into like the full thing. The full judo push-up is that you go through, once you've come through into the low push-up, is you come up into an up dog. And you push back into the forearm position, and you push back up into down dog, which can be a lot, right? But maybe only do a couple of these. Like I said, you'll feel much stronger if you've never done these before. And then we can add, like I said, sets. Like I like sets better than high reps. You could do 10 sets of these if you really wanted to just break this down, right? So I'm going to come up onto my hands and my knees. I'll push down through the forearms, push through, coming up. Then I'm going to push back onto my forearms, right? And then pushing back up into down dog. So I'm going to do this a few more times. Elbows, forearms, up. Back to low push-up, forearms, back to down dog. Forearms coming through, back, low push-up, forearms, last time. Forearms, shoot it through, up, glutes are strong, back, low push-up, and back into down dog. And like I said, once you get the rhythm of that, it's actually not as hard as it may look or as it may seem. So it's initially, again, it's a skill, but you get stronger from that. So just go back onto the hands, turn the hands out, and just move the weight side to side. So you're just moving the weight side to side, just getting more weight into the fingertips. Right? And then take it back where you're turning the hands back. Because that's, with the Judo Push-Up, you can feel it is quite fatiguing in the forearms. So that's why I'm adding more of this today. Right? Turn the hands forward, come up into plank, and you should see, right, that plank is becoming a little bit easier for you, right, as you're in this position. If you want to be on the tops of your feet, try to lean forward. Because the more weight you want to get, not that the weight has to be excessively forward, but when it is more forward, it assimilates
more and more of your handstand. So if you're not coming up to the wall today, or you're not kicking up, right? There's a lot of good things you can get to this. And the reality is that as you're just doing like basic yoga or whatever, at some point it's really, really good if you're not doing other forms of strength training, is that your yoga, in my opinion, should be much, much stronger than what it is in most popular forms. Like, it's good to do basic stuff, but it's very good to build up more strength in the body, and you'll feel you won't have the pain that you have in your knees or your back or your shoulders. So it's very good to work on your strength levels. So come up into plank again, press through the hands, and take it up into a down dog. Right? And then walk the feet forward. Right? Just move the weight into the hands and move it back into the heels. So move it forward, play around with the weight, bring it back into the heels, bring it forward, press through the hands, lower the heels. Last time, push, and then come back. Now I'm going to purposely take my hands off the floor. I want to stretch through my upper back. Right? This is like, it's not really utilized nearly enough in most people, unless you're doing like rounded positions, but the majority of your back rounds. So I'm purposely rounding my back to bring it up, and then I'm back up into a standing position. So once you come to standing, again, go back into tucking the tailbone underneath, sticking the butt out, bringing it underneath you, right? And get the legs to be strong. Just come up on the toes with the heels. So you're just kind of getting what it's like, abdomen, pelvis, lower body, right? Take the arms to a cactus position and just relax, right? Feel the difference? But then tuck through the tailbone, use the abdomen, take the arms up overhead. Palms could face forward or one facing one another, and drive through the arms, right? Get the arms up, drive down through the feet, I should say. Extend it through the arms, and then come up on the toes with the heels off the floor, and then lower the heels, and exhale, lower the arms. I'm going to do some more variations again, just not to just totally burn out your arms and take you up, and just to give you a little bit of variety. But again, use the wall if you need to. So I'm going to do some single leg squats. So I'm really kind of short in my stance. So I'm lowering, right, onto my heel, and then coming up. I'm lowering. And I've said this before, if you stick to just one side, it's a very good way to kind of overload the leg to an extent. You don't want to obviously go too low. I'm purposely keeping the knee up in case you need that. You could put a block underneath the shin right here. That could be a good measuring point. And then you don't ever have to bring your knee down to the floor. So I'm just going to come down really low, sitting on the heel, back up. I'm going to come back down, sitting down, coming up. So just going to change angles. So I'm turning, and then I'm sitting. So you'll see, I notice with one foot in my own practice is that it's very easy for me not to find as much of a spread through the toes on one side. So I try to keep that. So press through the feet, lower. And you don't have to sit as low as I am. Bring it up. Bring it down again. Bring it up. Bring it down. Right. Bring it up. And then one more time, bring it down. Sit, try to sit back on the foot if you can. Take it back up. And then once you're up, standing. So I'm going to do, which I've said before, which I think is probably one of the better exercises to do, is wall walks. So you walk up the wall, which demands a lot more strength in the hands and the arms. And it's like you're really kind of earning your keep, so to speak. I just took that from one of my son's books. But It's just like you're really earning the way to come up and to kick up. And everybody has the right to kick up. You could certainly do that, right? But in having a good, strong base is, in my opinion, way more valuable, right? And it's a lot harder to do, right? But like I said, it's more valuable. So I bring my hands down, I'm going to walk my feet up, and I'm going to walk in. So if you've never done this before, don't walk all the way back, right? Walk far enough, but know that you got to walk back out. And it's all about transferring the weight. So you shift the weight to one hand. You know, I remember a long time ago I was at a yoga studio and I was doing this, and a guy just looked at me and he's like, "How do you do that?" You know, it really doesn't take as much strength. It's just knowing how to transfer the weight. Like, all my weight is in my right foot now as I'm sitting here. There's no way I could pick my foot up, but I could pick up my left foot. You know, I could bring it forward. So it's really getting the weight to move around is how you can pick up your hands. So hands are down. Do plank again if you can't do this. So take one leg up the wall. So I'm taking my left leg up. I'm going to transfer my weight to my right hand, to my left, to my right, and to my left. So I'm back up against the wall, but I'm not touching the wall with anything but my toes. And I'm going to walk it back out. We'll transfer the weight. And I always say this, say one is like, whoa, it's like so much work for you. Then that's all you do. The great thing about not being very strong is it doesn't take much for you to get stronger. So it's good. You just do one and you're done. And then, like, this could be it. So you're like, oh, I just need to rest. That could be a great practice. So I'm going to do it a couple more times. I'm going to bring the hands down, taking my one leg up. I'm walking back. Push, 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 push. And then when you're back here, push strong through the hands. Then walk it back out. And I'm doing these not incredibly fast and not incredibly slow. Like, slow is probably going to be more work for you. It's going to be more intense. I'm going to do one more. So I'm going to bring the hands down. I'm taking one foot up. I'm walking back. And when I walk back, right, I'm going to get just my toes to the wall. But I'm going to try to keep my ribs in for 3 breaths. And then I'm going to walk back out. Back out, and then down. And then come into a forward bend if you can. So in a forward bend, as you're forward and you're down, just move the weight around a bit. I'm going to take my right foot, or my right hand underneath my right foot, toes all the way to the toes. But see how I'm rotating the arm out. Not that this is critical. It's really not. But it just adds a little bit of a spin, and it'll help develop a little bit more space into the wrist. So take the right hand out and then bring the left hand up. You gotta be careful if you're wearing rings. So add more weight into the hand if you need it, and rotate more through the shoulder. So get more of an external rotation in the shoulder. So a couple deep breaths here. And then you could turn that hand forward, or I'm going to come forward into a forward fold, but just in a different direction. I'm going to walk it forward, come into plank. And like I said about poses, like after doing handstand, this gets easier and easier for you. And that's why you want to increase the demand, and then that'll help support, you feeling strong, and your body will adapt, If you really, no matter what age, no matter how injured you are, if you keep increasing, nothing too crazy, right? You'll get stronger and healthier. So push through the hands, widen the shoulders, lift up into plank, and just kind of play around with the weight here. And go back up into a down dog. So pull all the way back up into a down dog. And come forward into plank. And then slowly lower all the way to the floor and come down or come up onto the elbows. Simple extension into Sphinx pose. So when you're in Sphinx, just try to play around with the weight in the hips. Get more weighted, get more extension. And it really depends on the person. Often it's the upper back that's really limiting people, but it's not everybody. You know, I work with people that have scoliosis, and it's really their lower back that they need to manipulate. So it really depends on the person, right? But I'm going to come down. I'm going to bring my hands relatively close to my shoulders, start more forward, and then as you lift up, keep your hips on the floor and keep more of the extension into more of the thoracic, which is the majority of your back. So when we were forward and we were rounding, right, that's expressing more flexion, and this is more, you know, extension. So I'm going to keep the hips down, but I'm going to try to lift up more through, you know, specific facets in my spine. You know, if I had to guess, it's probably T10, T11, something like that. And then I'm going to come forward and I'm coming down. And then I'm going to have my hands just underneath my shoulders. I'm going to push to the hands. I'm going to stay on the tops of my feet, right? I'm going to slowly, 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 slowly lower. And then I'm going to come down. So I'm going to use the strap, kind of like what we did in the very beginning of class, but I'm going to do it on my belly. So I hope this works. Not everybody might see this, but so if you remember when we had the arms out in this wide position, right, this wide, so you can do these on the abdomen, which is really great for the shoulders. It's just kind of difficult because I have this wall. So I'm going to be a little bit on an angle. I'm actually going to do it where my head is here. So you won't see my lower body, but I'm going to try to keep my feet together. So this will help in you seeing more of the full picture. So I'm coming down, and then when I come down, I'm taking the strap, you know, into this wide position. And in this wide position, my head is going to be down. And my head is down. I'm trying to keep my lower back from swaying, right? So my low back is lifting. Then I'm going to take the strap up, and then I'm bringing it back. And I started really wide. So be really wide here, but then if it's okay, make it more narrow, right? So with a more narrowed stance, it's more difficult, taking it back. And if you really need to get stronger, you don't necessarily need to pull out so wider. Just kind of think that you're using less and less of the strap to create the motion. So lifting up, really, really great rotation in the shoulders. Taking it up, bringing it forward. One more time, I'm going to lift it up. And like I said, you find an angle that's really kind of weak or tight, that's the angle that you want to spend more time on. So take it up, bring it down, right? And then I'm going to come back onto my mat, and I'm going to do another Cobra. So have the hands just underneath the shoulders, and say up dog better for you, just be an up dog. So lift up into a low Cobra, maybe something higher. Like I said, if I keep the hips down. But you know, some people are really, really tight in the shoulders, and that's why I'm using the strap today. But a stick is good. You know, you can use a weighted bar. You know, something really light though. I wouldn't start with anything really heavy. You know, under 5 pounds, definitely. So I'm going to come forward, come down, and then have the hands just underneath the shoulders, tuck the toes, press straight up into plank, and then go back up into a down dog. So go all the way back into a down dog, and then I'm going to walk my feet forward again, and I'm going to walk my hands back towards my feet. So I'm just changing the angle. I'm off to the side. I'm going to take the hands back into the middle. I'm going to bring it back or over to the right it was, and then back into the middle. Just organize your feet a little bit more. Use your thumbs, spread your baby toes, spread your fourth toe, your third toe, your second toe, your big toe, right? Kind of see how your feet sit, because that, you know, helps you in terms of organizing yourself. So I'm going to take my upper body up into that rounded position, right? And slowly bringing myself up into a standing position. So just take a couple deep breaths. I'm going to move my head to my left shoulder. Stretch out the neck. Now, just stay passive here. Don't move the head anymore. Just really passive. And take it up. And then move the head over to the right shoulder. Take it up. Now I'm going to try to use a little bit more effort in moving my head to my shoulder without compensating. Like I'm not trying to get my left shoulder to be higher to get my head lower. It really doesn't matter how far you can bring the head down, but you can feel what it's actually doing as you're in it, and you actually see if you need more leverage or not. Like I'm using effort here to take the head over, and then taking the head up, and then bringing the head over to the other side, and then, you'll see that one side is more congested, tighter. You could certainly spend more time on that side. It's very good for the neck. So then just bring the chin, bring it neutral, but bring it down into the chest. And then look forward and look up. Bring the head neutral, bring the chin in. Expose your neck, your shoulders. Bring it forward, bring it up. See if the nose is crooked. Bring the head down. So eventually the chin can actually touch the chest, and it doesn't have to be a day. And you can bring it back to neutral. So I'm going to do a little bit more in terms of squats, something similar to what we did earlier, but in changing, being able to rotate the thighs in and out is highly valuable. So I'm going to be in this just neutral stance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my left foot. I'm turning on my toe. I'm going to sit down onto my left heel. I'm bringing it up. I could add motion and go into my right foot. Back up. I'm going to swivel. Sitting back. Coming up. Again, I'm doing it where my knee isn't touching the floor, but certainly can, right? And if it does touch, you want it to be really light. You don't want it to be, something that's, really, really, like you don't want to pound your knee into the floor, right? Switching over, coming up, over to the right side, turning to the right, and then back up. But just, I said this last week, the more you manipulate your legs in space, it's just so good for the tissues, and it's just going to make you less likely to get hurt. If you play sports, your knees are out of alignment. I used to wrestle, your knee is never in alignment, hardly ever. So the more you take it out of alignment, it's actually healthier. But you got to tread slow at first, right? But I'm going to do a handstand, and you don't have to do it in terms of kicking up, but if you obviously need the wall, of course, use the wall. You want your shoulders over your hands, your wrists. So when I push to the hands, I'm here, and I want to be forward enough where it feels heavy. Like you want the weight in your hands. Your shoulders are behind your hands. It's almost impossible to kick up. Unless you're really strong or really tight, I should say. It's you might be able to get up that way. But when you kick up, you can have a rhythm to it. I say this all the time. So be okay with not going all the way up. But each time you kick up a little bit higher, and that'll help get you up. And this is good for conditioning. It's good for you to get upside down. But in terms of alignment, it's you're not going to be as lined up as you were in the first variation of walking the feet up the wall. That's why I think this is good for some things, but it's not great for everything, right? So I'm going to come down. My hands are down. I'm going to protract to the shoulders, right? And I'm going to bring the weight forward. I'm going to swing my right leg up, and then maybe bringing it down.
Hello.
Maybe don't go all the way up, but you certainly can try that. So maybe he should. We'll do the wall walk for Noah because he could potentially fall, and I don't want him to fall, but he's good at wall walks.
I could be your model for you if you'd like.
Yeah, well, Well, that's true. I can show you how to spot a handstand. So turn around. So have your hand, no. Be laterally, be on the mat. So have your hands down, and then walk up.
I just need to take off my socks to be easier.
Yeah, it's much easier with the socks off. So he's not walking all the way in, right? But he's still in a good line from the side. That's good, just there. Don't go any further. And again, you want to, when you walk in, you want to have enough gas in the tank to come out. Because if you can't come out, that's when you can fall. He's flexible enough to go off to one side, and his hands are resilient enough, they're soft enough. But if your hands are stiff, right, they won't be able to, they won't be able to take your weight, right? You got to think of, he's not even 50 pounds, or he's close to 50 pounds. So what we'll do is I'm going to stretch your hands out a little bit. If you went up, you kicked up, great. Let's actually do one more set of the Judo Push-Ups, just so it's more familiar. So you could think of like when you are at the very end of your practice or your training, it should be difficult. Like, so you could cap it off with something, and I'm going to cap it off with this Judo Push-Up. So I'm going to be here where my hands are down, and I'm going to do the full moving up into up dog like we did earlier. It's, like I said, all the strap work that we did, it's good for the shoulders. So I'm coming here, up into down dog. Right, I'm going to come down with the forearms. I'm going to push straight through into an up dog. And pushing down, low push-up, back. Right, coming down, pushing through, up. Come back, low push-up, forearms, elbows, back to down dog, up. Be careful with your back. If it's too much on your back, just do the low push-up. So come here. You don't have to come all the way through, right? Come here, back. Do one more. Elbows, up, down, and back, and then you're back, down. So just turn the hands back towards the knees. Stretch out the palms, stretch out the wrist, And like with any class or training that you're doing, like I said, if it's progressive enough, you'll get stronger. But if it's not, it's good maintenance. A lot of the classes that I teach, you feel great from them. But your strength levels in a class I'm teaching, you just got to bump it up a little bit more, but then also scaling back when you need to. I'm going to do a stretch for the inner thighs, something that I think is often neglected. So what you need is a wall. You're going to face the wall, and my feet are going to be up against the wall. And you could use a sofa. Your sofa's long enough, wide enough. So my hands are behind me, and I'm pushing, and this wall's a little bit too narrow. It's not as long as I need it to be for me, but it's just a good example for you guys. And you don't have to go as far forward as you can, right? But as you're into the wall with your pelvis, it's going to help stretch out the inner thighs. And what you're doing for the lower body is really for the benefit of the upper body. So push down into the hands, lift yourself up, and a little bit of stress could be better than a lot. And if you've never done this before, right, make it minimal. You should feel, a nice opening of the inner thighs, and that really helps with doing some variations of kick-ups and handstands, but it really helps with pressing up. And I'm going to sit cross-legged, and then when I sit cross-legged, you might see it's a little easier to sit cross-legged. So take your right hand to the right, reach your left hand to the left, squeeze your legs into the middle, lean back in space, lean forward, find the angle that you need the most in terms of stretching the body. It's good to get lower, right? It's also good to be up high and change the way that you do any type of position, right? Don't always do it the same. And bring yourself up. You can recross the legs, take the left hand to the left,
Reach the right hand to the right, off to the side. There's strength here, right? And that's what's helping to stretch out the body. I could be leaning forward towards the knees. I could be leaning back. I could get to the elbow, forearm, and you can bring yourself back up. All right, so I hope that was a great class for you. I always enjoy teaching this class. So let me know how it's going. If you like it, please like the video. If it's something that you think would be valuable to a friend or someone in your family, please share it. That's the highest compliment to me and my services. All my classes are donational based, so like if you wanted to send me a donation, fantastic. If you can't afford it, just keep taking the class. Of course, I want to support as many people as I can during this time. Good practice, keep practicing, right? A little bit every day and more frequency. So rather than all at once, right, spread it out. One of my favorite things to do is just to walk to the nearest park and just practice, right? If I don't have a lot of time. But if I have more time, I'm going to find the furthest park that I can walk to, practice, and walk back. As your practice improves, your walking should improve. Like your walking should get better and better. That's a great measuring stick in terms of how your practice is developing. All right, have a beautiful weekend, and hopefully I'll see you soon in class. Thank you for all the positivity. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it. Namaste.